Good evening. My name is Charlotte Minnick, and I'm a student project manager at the Clarke Forum for Contemporary Issues at Dickinson College. On behalf of the Clarke Forum, Dickinson College, the Center for Sustainability Education, and the Departments of Environmental Studies, Film and Media Studies, and Theater and Dance, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event, a conversation on the making of the film King Cole. This program is also part of Dickinson's Fall 2025 Energy Transition Series. At this time, I ask that you please silence all cell phones and other devices. In the event of an emergency, accessible exits are located through the door behind me. There will be a question and answer session immediately following the program, so please hold all questions until that time. During the question and answer session, we ask that you keep questions succinct so that everyone who wishes has a chance to ask their question. As a show of respect for our speakers and everyone in attendance, please stay until the end of the program, including the question and answer session. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that Dickinson College is on the unceded lands of the Susquehannock Nation. We acknowledge the many indigenous peoples that lived with these lands, as well as the thousands of indigenous children forced into the Carlisle Indian Industrial School starting in 1897 as a part of a federal cultural eradication effort. As an environmental science student, I've learned about the role natural resources can play in a region, though mostly through an economic and sustainability-focused lens. While this perspective has been helpful in writing reports or talking about green energy, it hasn't allowed me to see its other dimensions. Understanding how a seemingly material resource can impact people and communities at a deeper level needs a different approach. The unconventional nature of the film King Cole fills this role, using a blend of poetic narration, sound design, and dance to connect the audience with the stories and people behind the facts. For that reason, I'm excited to introduce tonight's guest, Academy Award-nominated and Emmy and Peabody-winning documentary filmmaker, Elaine McMillion Sheldon, director of the documentary King Cole. The film premiered at Sundance in 2023 and has since been screened at over 40 festivals in North America and Europe, as well as during an independent run across the US. With recognition from Esquire, Marie Claire, and receiving a critic's pick from the New York Times, the film has been continuously hailed for its lyrical, genre-blending approach to nonfiction. A longtime resident of West Virginia, McMillion Sheldon is known for her intimate portrayals of Appalachian, rural, and Southern life. Her previous films include Emmy-winning Heroine, Recovery Boys, and Hollow, a Peabody-winning interactive documentary. She is also a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Creative Capital Award, and a USA Fellowship. Sherry Harper McCombs, Professor Emerita in Theater, moved back to her home in Summers County, West Virginia this year. A native of Central Appalachia, she has strong interests in the culture and history of this diverse and artistically rich region. Harper McCombs is a costume designer, craftsperson, and puppeteer whose work over the past year has been seen at Pesta Bonica and Universitas Gadjah Mada in Indonesia, Puppeteers of America Southeastern Festival in Asheville, North Carolina, the XPT Festival at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Greenbrier Valley Theater in Lewisburg, West Virginia. She is currently adjunct teaching in the Fine Arts Department at Concord University in Athens, West Virginia. And now, please join me in welcoming our guests, Elaine McMillion Sheldon and Sherry Harper McCombs.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I forgot my notes. One second. I'm Elaine. I'm the filmmaker. And really excited to be in conversation with Sherry. We've exchanged emails over years, and she's been to screenings, and so we've never really sat down, especially in front of an audience, and had a conversation, so this will be really fun. Before we do that conversation, I hope many of you were able to see the film last night, but we didn't want to assume that everybody had seen the film, and I did want to provide a little bit of context beyond just talking. Since it's a film, we have visuals to play with. So I want to show 2 clips, but I want to set those clips up first, and then Sherry and I will have the discussion, and then you guys will have a chance to ask questions. So King Cole started in 2019. I started by documenting coal-related cultural events, things like coal dust runs, where they throw fake black coal dust, it's actually cornstarch, on runners, so when they cross the finish line, they look like they just got out of a shift from the mines. Coal pageants, coal shoveling contests, coal education in the classroom. Some of these things had been around since I was a kid in the coal fields, but I really thought these were rituals and traditions that needed to be documented as a living archive that was dying. These were things that were being phased out. And so one of the very first shoots for this film was in a classroom with a man named Fred Powers. He was a retired miner. I actually met him in 2012 when I was making my project Hollow. So many of the people that appear in King Cole I had already been working with for over a decade with other work. And so a lot of people wonder, like if you saw the tattoo shop, that was actually a person I had known for 10 years and had filmed a different stage of his life as a tattoo artist in the coal field. So King Cole is really a accumulation of all the trust built over that period of time. But Fred and I decided that showing him in the classroom would be a really interesting way to bring in the history of labor disputes and fatalities. And he had this like no kid filter, which kind of surprised me. It was neither pro or anti-coal necessarily, it was just simply his story. And he impressed us with the ability to walk that fine line of honoring the past while also calling out the injustices. And the kids impressed us with their attention and curiosity and humor and enthusiasm. And in the scene, which we'll show here in a moment, it's clear when the students ask, "What's that?" when he holds up a piece of coal, that this story was not one of their own making, that this was something being handed to them. And this scene it was one of the first scenes we filmed, and it became pretty instrumental in the reasoning why I decided to center kids in the story. Kids really provided a way for us to sidestep a lot of the current politics around coal and think about the future in a different way and have a different conversation. So let's roll this clip and meet Fred and the kids.
I was born one morning when it was drizzling rain. I picked up my shovel and I walked to the mines. I loaded 16 ton of number 9 coal. And the straw ball said, "Well, bless my soul." Say, "Peter, don't you call me? 'Cause I can't go. I owe my soul. To the company store. We go down about 600 feet. You go down, it's got tracks and metal man trip cars you ride in that takes you to these sections. The mines have been worked about 70 years, so it was real deep, but it was real good coal for making steel. It's the most dangerous job in the coal mines, and it pays top dollar because you go down in a place, and there's a place about as big as this room, and I was sitting towards the back of my machine, and I romped down on it. I'm gonna go out and get me a load. And I romped down on it and getting ready to swing out there to get me a load, and boom, big methane explosion happened and come right in front of me. Man, 2 more seconds, and I would have been right into that thing, and I heard if a miner gets caught in a methane explosion, it'll burn all the skin off your body, eyeballs out of your socket, and most likely you're going to be body parts. Oh my goodness. Yes, sir, ma'am.
You're very lucky that you didn't get killed.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Do you miss being a coal miner?
Yes, I do. Yes, sir. One more question.
What is that?
That's coal. That's what real coal feels like.
Can I feel it?
Yeah, you can touch it.
Whoa! It feels like diamonds.
Feel it. Yes.
Do you know what diamonds feel
Yes.
like?
Feel it.
I don't feel diamonds. That's pretty big to me. Yeah, I'm a real person. Oh my gosh.
So the film progressed like that, starting in 2019. documenting coal culture. And then COVID-19 hit. And that caused all of us to go inside, pause what we were doing, in my case, spending lots of time in people's personal space. But it also allowed the filmmaking process for this film to really unfold and change in a different way. I came to discover through looking at the footage, through applying through grants, through actually editing this footage and showing it to people, that the documentation of coal culture wasn't enough, that it wasn't actually getting to the undercurrent of why I wanted to tell this story. And the pandemic really provided the space for me to think about what was the story I wanted to tell, what was the history I wanted to pass to my own kids, and thinking about that. So through digging through my own family archives, through conversations with my producer and my director of photography, who is my partner as well, and through relearning my own history, through letting go what I thought was acceptable in nonfiction storytelling, and making room for things like poetry and folklore and magical realism and ghost stories and fables and dance and the land itself and sound art, among many other cinematic tools. All those things helped guide the final language of the film to move from a film that was simply a documentation. So the final film is a documentary that does blend fable storytelling elements to a different story of coal. And it does this by centering two West Virginia girls, Lainey Marsh and Gabby Wilson. I cast these two girls, which is also a non-traditional thing to do for a documentary, at dance studios. They are not actors, but some of the scenes they're featured in feature real-life moments that, like the West Virginia Coal Festival, if you saw the film, in those scenes they were placed to see what it was like to be a kid in those scenes, but they do and say what they wanted to do and say. It was unscripted. Other scenes, like the one we're about to see, feature them dancing in front of coal piles or in surreal landscapes, and those were set up legitimately. I was laying in bed one night and I had this idea of a memory of growing up and like dancing along the railroad tracks where the coal is lying, and I knew I wanted that image in the film. So sometimes it was just like, I want this image, I want to convey what this feels like. But never were they given a script to read. They were asked to be themselves in every scene. And just a note on the dancing, since we're about to see that. When I knew I wanted dancers to play the role and break down this sort of old world of King Coal, I worked with a choreographer named Celia Rowson Hall, and she brilliantly choreographed a dance that mixed the symbolism and metaphors of the film, the end of one world and the beginning of another. And we edited this dance as a form of time travel in the film. In the film, the movement of choreography represents the arrival and birth of a new story and encourages creativity and the remaking of our economy. In the end, I learned that I needed to break open my own ways of working and relearning how to tell stories, especially personal ones, and how to add more play into nonfiction to get to a deeper, more internal truth beyond the observed truth that I had already found. So we'll roll this clip and then Sherry and I can chat.
Scoop here, you go step back, then step again, then you just turn around and go up, like that, just go up, then you bring your hands through, and you grab something, throw it up, then you up.
Everyone has their own story here. For some, the king has provided. For others, he's stolen. For some, he's given pride. For others, he's brought shame. The land tells a story of the king, too. This football field was once a mountain that became a mine where this piece of coal was cut.
Got my little cheat sheet book here. Cool. Wow, it's weird to be wearing a mic. This actually set up really nicely one of the questions that I had, which is that in this film, the mountains are a character. Mm-hmm. The mountains have dreams, and these two girls have dreams, and both of those dreams seem very fragile, mm-hmm. And beautiful in juxtaposition with each other. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how that came about in your process.
Yeah, I feel very very much if you grow up around these mountains, you feel a life force from them in so many ways. When you've been away from them, you get back in there. I mean, if you aren't from there, you feel maybe trapped. You get in there and you're like, well, I can't see around the corner at all, right? Like, it's not like a Wyoming, Montana mountain situation. You're in the mountains when you're there. And so for me, it's always felt like an embrace. And so I've always thought about the mountains as their own characters. Mm-hmm. Like, even the way kudzu will move throughout them and create new shapes from them, and different things, and the different trees, and the different seasons. And I've always thought about, what does it mean to name a mountain? How so many of our mountains have gone unnamed, because to name something is to say we care for it, right? It's to set it apart. When you take in a stray cat and you give it a name, it's no longer a stray cat, right? And I thought about the fact that we haven't named our mountains as much in Central Appalachia, whereas out west, all the mountains have names, right? And so we don't tear them apart. So does that make a difference? So I was thinking about this symbology of the symbolism of not giving them names and not treating them as individuals, but treating them as a sea. Because that range is the oldest in the world. Like, they may be less spectacular than the Rockies, but that's only because they've been eroded so much longer. They're old. And when you go to Scotland and other places, you see them, right? That's the same range. And so I also was thinking about how stubborn a mountain is, and I love that stubbornness, that a mountain doesn't care if you want progress. A mountain doesn't care if you want a highway. It doesn't care if you want a Dollar General. It's there, and you're going to have to move it. And I think that also is very core to a lot of Appalachian culture, is mm-hmm. very stubbornness, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. I was really influenced in a way that's not on screen from this thing I found called The Immigrant's Guide to West Virginia. It was written the same year that we became a state, in 1863. And it was trying to attract people from Europe to West Virginia. And for the first 180 pages of the book, it's maybe a 200-page small pamphlet type thing, coal is not mentioned. You wouldn't know that coal was going to be such the dominant story. But what is mentioned is the mountains, and the trees, and the flora, and the fauna, and the fields of honey, and the buckwheat, and the peach orchards, and the apple orchards. And it's a vision of a place that I did not grow up in, because all my history books have started the first chapter as coal. So I always thought that's always been us. right? If our chapter 1, you open the book of West Virginia and your chapter 1 is coal, and that's your starting point of history, you're telling people that's what they are and that's all they are. But in 1863, that wasn't, right? And I'm not saying it was perfect then, far from it. But there was a value that had to be changed through industry and other things to defeat these mountains and their stubbornness, and to break them down and make them more fragile in this way, so that we could overcome them in the name of progress. Right. So I think about them a lot. And Louise McNeill, who's a poet from West Virginia, she was a poet laureate in the 70s, I think in the 70s. She was like, some of her poems, if you're not familiar with them, they're hard to get your hands on, but if you can get your hands on them, they're wonderful. And she writes a lot about this. This was like the Greenbrier County mountains that she grew up around, where, you know, talking about them as characters, basically, that stand in the way of what others want.
Right. And so the mountain's dreams are thwarted by coal. Do you see the girls' dreams as being thwarted by coal in a way also, as part of this story?
Well, I think for a lot of young people, that they feel actually smothered by mountains too, right? You know, like their dreams too feel limited by the mountains. So like the mountains can be a freeing thing, but it could also be a very limiting thing for people. I just think like coal is, it's such a bummer what it became. Like because it's actually really, that's one of the purposes of that shot when she transports from the coal mine to this forest, is because the reminder to people, this is a fossil, this was a forest, that coal itself was a living organism that has been under pressure and under time created, and we have gone through it very quickly and have used it in ways that, you know, have been detrimental, in ways that have maybe improved certain places and really not improved other places. But I wanted to remind people of the time scale that we're living in, that although we are looking at the past 200 years, think how long it took for that mountain and that coal itself. So I never really saw coal as like the bad, evil thing that's in the mountain, as much as like, I think in the final scene it said it's not dirty or clean, it's elemental. It's what we do with it. And I really appreciate that standpoint, because we only know the history that we have made for ourselves. We don't, like, this is the history we're living, right? And it could have been a different way, but it wasn't. And are the mountains dreams? I mean, the river dreams in the film too. I mean, all these things felt important to me, not from like a foo-foo, silly way, but like I really think it's important to remember that a lot of the reason why people leave and stay and return to the region is because of these features, and to think of this place without these things, or this place, it's almost the heartbreak of losing them that keeps people fighting for the place. The mountains, the rivers, the birds, the animals, all these things, And I think there's a real disconnect. I really wanted people to understand that just because you work a job, mining, which is seen as a very destructive thing, doesn't mean that's solely who you are and how you interact with the environment. My grandpa, who's in the film, like one of the scenes is him like tending his garden and stuff. You know, when you go from working in the dark, a 12-hour shift, and then your job is to like work the farm or the garden at home, that was a reality for a lot of miners. It wasn't like they were blowing up the mountain and then also like, you know, polluting the land, right? Like they were tending to it as well. So I wanted to complicate that it's not just something for environmentalists, right? It's everybody, it's all of the land and all the people.
Right. So talk a minute, if you could, just in terms of research, because one of the things that I love about Hollow, is there are a lot of our history is hidden from us. I think that's true of us as a country, but I think it's pretty specifically true about Central Appalachia. I mean, they tried to take away the historic status of Blair Mountain. So talk a minute about the hidden histories. I'm thinking specifically of the Mingo Oak.
The Mingo Oak.
And how you find those and how you sort of uncover and discover.
I think if you would have asked me when I started this film, will it have archive, I would have said no. I didn't really see a place for actual archival image on screen, but I was so taken by the archive I was able to find, and I decided like the audience is not going to come to the film with the full context of understanding these pretty big stages of change, whether it was in the 60s around mechanization or in the 30s when things were really booming. And so it felt important to ground people so that they didn't just see the film and just think, well, that looks pretty bad, and not understand, oh, it was better at some point, not better for all. We could really untangle that better, because that better is not just better. It's much more complicated, but there were 100,000 jobs. There were, these types of things. So the hidden archives, I didn't know anything about the Mingo Oak. I found it, I feel like documentary research is really rabbit holes. I'm doing it now, and I'm like, why am I listening to this podcast about blah, blah, blah? And then, someone says something, and that sends me down this, and I'm like, that's a really good scene. Does that still happen? And then you're trying to find a character. So you're reverse engineering everything. You're learning that something occurs, and then you're trying to find the real-life example of when and where it occurs. And that was sort of the historical thing, is I just happened to find myself. I was, trying to find significant trees in the state that I could film, see if there were any left. And I just came across this tiny little history. It's not even known, really, about the Mingo Oak, about it being cut down, in a newspaper article from the 30s, 34 or 33 or whatever it was. And all I found was a line that said, it said the men showed up to cut it down, and they tested how sharp their axes were by shaving their beards with it. And I was like, that's crazy. And then the next thing was, and motion picture cameras were rolling the whole time. And I was like, oh, interesting. So somebody documented this. And thank God for archivists like Richard Faust, who works at the West Virginia Culture. He didn't know this existed. He didn't know the 1930s color footage existed. That archive is so full. If anybody has access to money to save an archive, please donate it to the West Virginia State Culture Center. That archive is so full of gems like this that have never been digitized. We paid to scan it and digitize it into 4K, but was sitting in the dusty archive, had never been found. And Richard's like, oh, that's so interesting. Let me see. I feel like I've heard something about a tree. There being some footage about a tree. But you should see this space. It's like an underground pit of just film reel after film reel. And one guy, who's the only guy, knows where everything is. Wow. So when we found the color footage, then I was like, oh, I've never seen color footage, how expensive that was to shoot. Hence the coal company was the one shooting it. And the reason, the context of it all was so perfect for King Coal, because the company asked the people, they gave them seeds to beautify the coal camp, to plant bunches of flowers and trees and everything, to do a garden contest so they could attract more people to their coal camps. Wow. Right? But while that sounds kind of sinister, the coal camp gave them seeds to make it look better than it was, people took a lot of pride in their gardens. And that footage is so moving, because there's these people that are living in a pretty bleak landscape, right? The mine is the life, and you're shopping at a company store, you're getting paid in script, but you're tending to this incredible flower garden that was so vibrant. I'd never seen footage like that. Plus it was an integrated coal camp. Yeah. And so there was just so much there that I was kind of devastated at the age I was to not know any of these histories. But also you find out things in time when you're ready to, and then you can share them with people in ways that's useful. But yeah, growing up in West Virginia, the history, we take a class called West Virginia History. Every 8th grade class takes it. I did get Hollow into the curriculum, so a lot of 8th graders actually use the interactive documentary, which is good. I don't think I'll be able to convince the state to get King Coal into the curriculum, but you never know. There's some teachers that might show it. Yeah. It is screening in high schools and middle schools, so we'll see if it makes it totally there. But I don't know, part of me is angry about stuff that's hidden like that, and then part of me is would I have even appreciated it until now? Right. And maybe did I learn things that just didn't register with my 12-year-old mind who didn't know
Right.
what to value at that time and know what was sacred and what was
Right.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because you are from a coal family, you know, that some things just pass through, but then other things don't.
Yeah.
There are things you don't talk about.
From a coal family that, like, my papa, who mined in like 28-inch coal, so on his belly, he's been the last union miner in my family, to my dad, who grew up in the days of, like, basically coal conglomerates, so like multinational companies buying out. So my papa worked in these what were called like dog mines, and all independently owned local mines, which had tons of safety problems, but you knew who your boss was. My dad grew up in this like big company world. And so very different. That was like the days of strip mining being really big. And now it's like now the Russians own our mines, and like all kinds of crazy things are happening. But yeah, it's changed so much, like what you're allowed to talk about, what you're allowed to say about coal in a coal family. I remember when I came home from Boston when I was at grad school, and my dad said, his words were like, "That was the final death knell of coal." And I was like, we're talking about the death of coal now? Okay, we've progressed since I left. Like, what happened? Like, I've only been gone for 6 months. What happened? And like, there was a conversation around like coal-fired power plants not being updated, essentially, and they were going to be taken offline. And I was like, okay, there's an opening, we can talk, right? Because just for so long, it felt like a topic you weren't allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
It's very complicated to explain it. It's almost religious to explain it to anyone. If you grew up in like a very religious home where you don't question things, some religious homes you are welcome to question things, but there are some that you aren't. And so imagine that, but with your dad's livelihood and your generational livelihood and your whole community and your teachers and everyone, right? From the bakery to the school, everyone has skin in the game of that mine staying open. Otherwise, there's no school for you to go to, right? So like, you don't go around asking questions until you leave, and then you think, I wonder if anyone cares enough to ask these people if this is what they want for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So that sort of leads nicely to another question that I had. I told you, like, I like to look at the credits because filmmaking is sort of a mystery to me. I'm a live performance person, and I always like to look at the jobs. And I also discovered you're your own boom operator, like sometimes.
We have to do everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in Hollow, there is a job that I thought, that's a beautiful job. Everyone should have a community manager.
Yeah.
And it made me just think about how, you're talking about those pictures that the coal companies took of families to make them look good.
Yeah.
Well, more recently, when the Appalachian Regional Commission came about, they went in and deliberately took pictures to make everything look bad. Barefoot children, houses with no plumbing.
Yeah.
And those things were there, but then that becomes the narrative.
Yeah.
And so that leads to a lot of distrust.
Yeah.
So then how do you come into a community? How do you manage that? How do you address the distrust and lead to trust?
Yeah. Hollow was a project all about agency, engagement, philosophies around like not passive consumption of film, but active engagement with narrative. So creating an interactive experience that allowed people to choose their own adventure, we thought was a closer way to get people to engage, to actually participate in a meaningful way. But that didn't just include the end user of the person watching the project, that included the community itself. We wanted them to create the film with us. So the community manager, this was like, we were holding community workshops where we were doing trainings with people to shoot their own films, and we were collecting archives and then scanning it and giving it back, digital archives to them, and then they would allow us to use portions of it for the film. We were doing just listening sessions and giving them like reports of direct quotes and things, just like encouragement of things to encourage people to come together to think about these bigger questions. Because one of the things in McDowell County, which is it's a big county, but it's remote. It's hard to get to. And on one side of the mountain, you have people doing the same thing. On the other side of the mountain, but each of them only have half the amount of funding to do what they're doing, and they're not really working together. And we were trying to sort of like help those two people communicate and figure out like how do two people that neither of them have enough to do what they're doing, can they actually communicate? So it was a matter of just more listening and handing over ownership to folks, like, what do you want to film? And how do you want it to be perceived? And do you want to learn to edit and these types of things? I mean, we made Hollow pre-iPhone days. It was like early iPhone days. So people, I know that's unimaginable because all you guys have really nice cameras in your pocket right now, but that was not, I'm not even that old, and that wasn't the reality when I started making films. Like, so when we gave people community cameras, we raised money to buy those through Kickstarter. We gave 5 around the community. Like, it was a big deal. Like, people were like, I've never filmed my life. So that was really important. I mean, it's so hard to say how to do community engagement correctly because I think it's so dependent on a grassroots mentality that you work with the flow and pace of that community and what they're comfortable with, and you let them guide and you encourage certain things, and if it doesn't resonate, you work in a different way. But what was interesting about the documentation of stories is people as young as 4 or 5 and then as old as 80 wanted to film their own story through that. And making sure they see the final thing, that feels important. Like, I think there's a lot of, I'm not critical of organizations that like come in and volunteer and help Appalachia, but there's a lot of people that do that work and often aren't asking people what they really need. And so I've seen situations of like housing, like people will come in and they'll roll down brand new linoleum in someone's house, but that person just needs like their engine in their car fixed. And so what do? They roll up the linoleum and sell it so they can get a car that's working, right? So there's a lot of misguided attempts to help. It's not all that different than what we see internationally. And I just didn't want film to be another extractive thing that just made me feel good about what I was doing but wasn't actually useful for the people there.
Yeah. So if you could talk a little bit about, I'm not even quite clear how to phrase this question, because when I look at your work, I know those people, right? And that's King Cole, that's Hollow, that's the Frontline documentary on Black Lung.
Yeah.
I know those people. When other people film in Appalachia, I frequently look and go, I don't know those people. Is there a way in which you approach filming people that makes them more comfortable, more willing to open up? Makes their surroundings, like even, I was watching the Frontline documentary again the other week, and it's this very lovely, nice working class home. And I look at that and I go, another eye would have, I feel like I wouldn't be seeing this home that I know. I feel like I would be seeing a home that I don't know. If that...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like cultural and class sensitivity that almost like, I don't know if it can be taught. It can be done by an outsider. However, that's like when I go into any home, it looks like my great aunt's home, or you know what I mean? Like, and I want to treat a person on camera the way I want them to feel dignified in the portrayal. I don't necessarily think dignity is always the first priority of a lot of other filmmakers. I know it's not. I think it's more of a sense of greed, and I write on Substack quite a bit about nonfiction, and I talk about greed a lot because I think it's like a real issue within the industry, because there is a constant need to shock, and there's a constant need to like get an image that feels so unique. And I think there's this style of documentary that is popular that is basically catching people off guard. Right. And I don't do that. Like unless someone knows I'm rolling up with a camera and coming in their house, I go in and meet people. Like I budget time whenever I'm planning on shooting. I budget time to spend time with people before they ever are on camera. Like with certain cases, like documenting emergency situations in heroin, I couldn't do that, right? But the people I was filming with, I had their trust, and then I had to go to the person in the emergency situation afterwards, show them the footage, explain what was happening, and get their permission. So like, there's a lack of permission that I think a lot of people don't feel the need to get because they give themselves a license with a camera. And there's a framing thing. I mean, some of it's like lenses. Some of it's even like, how a distortion of a face or property can look on a wide angle versus a 50 millimeter. It's the time of day. Are you shooting people in harsh light? Or are you shooting them in soft light? I mean, some of it seems like aesthetic choices, but it is and my intention is to, how does this person want to be seen? Like, I try to better understand that by getting to know them. Also, people tell me, like, I made a film called Betting on Trump, and this kid, he was a child, essentially. He was like 17. I filmed him. He had a newborn baby, and he had a 3-year-old, and he told me, you can film in my house, but my grandpa's really sick. Yeah. And he had like a bag, like a, whatever the colon, I don't know what they're called. Yeah. He's like, please don't film that. He doesn't mind if you film him. Please don't film that. And please don't film the empty cans in my front yard. I know we need to clean them up, but like, we just have too much. I've got a newborn baby. And so, like, some people, like, once you get to know them, they just tell you, like, please just don't film this stuff because I don't want it to define me. And, like, yes, I know it will. And I don't ever break the rules of that, right? I'm not filming co-executives where, like, if a co-executive was like, don't shoot my 17 Bentleys, I might be like, well, that's part of the story. I'm filming people that are generally, like, extremely gracious and have absolutely no benefit to being on camera. Yeah. Like, the people that let me in their lives, there's no reason why they should, really. They're just generous with their story and time, and so I feel a really big responsibility to not, I don't want them to see that and be embarrassed by something. And I don't know, I just am not really that interested in sort of the gotcha style of documentary. Yeah. Parachute journalism is alive and well in Appalachia. It's still maybe one of the few parts of the country where we're still allowed to belittle a pretty wide swath of people. Yeah. It's very strange. It goes unchecked constantly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are we doing okay on time? Are we? Just to sort of circle back on the storytelling style in King Cole and the, for lack of a magical realism or the mythic quality of it. And to talk a minute about that in relation to a documentary, because, I mean, as an artist, we think about truth, right? Like, what is truth? Mm-hmm. And stories are true, even though they may not be facts. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about that and, like, you know, the differences, the similarities, or how you're thinking on that?
Well, sometimes I think fairy tales, fables, fantasy, myth can get us closer to a harder truth than just looking at it directly. Sometimes truths are difficult to look at. And providing a remove, whether that's a form of expression that makes it look slightly different, that allows you to see it with new light, or allows you to, in some ways, transport yourself there because it's not just hitting you over the head. It's not telling you how to think, but it's just creating a space for you to think. That was the idea. That's not traditional nonfiction filmmaking. It's funny, we tried to get this film shown on airplanes. So like airplane distribution is like basically held in the hands of one woman. I forget her name. She like decides what all the films are going to be on all the planes.
Wow.
It's wild.
Wow.
And she saw the film and she was like, there aren't any famous actors. And I was like, does she think it's a fiction film? I think she did. And there's a lot of people that are confused, and like, I don't mind that. I intentionally made a film that was not the film you expected to see when you came to see the film. And that doesn't resonate with everybody, but ultimately my responsibility is to the people that are in the film and the people that have lived this experience, and to them this mythicness, this magical realism, this expansion of what's real, what's myth, and the fact that that line's already been blurred by the king and the companies and the presence of coal already. It made a lot of sense to locals. Like they weren't the ones confused about what was real and what was fake. It was everybody else who was like trying to parse out, because there's an essence of, I mean, this is the reason I don't like to actually talk about, get too much in the weeds of this, is like, I'm not a fan of our like post-truth era, like of our post-fact. So I don't want to like advocate that there's like a subjective truth that's more true than the reality. But I do think like a personal truth, which is a personal story, is kind of hard to, it's not a film about facts and figures. Right. So like you have to use other tools that, whether they're emotion, whether they're sound art, whether they're different things that expand what we just see to a realm of thinking and feeling and dreaming. Because I really think like, I mean, any good thing in the world was originally someone's dream, right? Right. Like it became their reality, but it had to be someone's dream first. And also bad things were people's dreams first. And so I think that I'm interested in that space between how do you make a dream or a myth a reality, and the dangers, but also like the kind of beauty of that. And that's why we don't give you an answer of what's next after King Cole, because the space, the place we wanted to put you in was just a place of thinking. Because the answer is not simple. There's no blanket answer.
Right. Right. Just the place dreams.
Yeah.
And the people there dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is like a side question. Do you know what Gabby and Lainey are doing?
Oh my gosh, they're so old now.
I know,
Like,
I was gonna say.
They don't even look the same. Like you wouldn't recognize them. If they walked in here, you'd be like, I sort of know who they are.
Yeah.
Lainey's
Well, that was
so
the beauty,
tall.
right? They're in that.
Yes.
There is this place in girlhood that is just this cusp. You're still a little girl.
Yes.
But you're almost not a little girl.
Yes.
But you're,
So when I was making the film, I had watched the film Pan's Labyrinth. Have you guys seen the film Pan's Labyrinth? And I was thinking the girl would be younger. I was sort of thinking around that age. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if she was like, had that feeling of like the Pan's Labyrinth. And I found this little girl at one of the, we did a lot of casting at dance studios, and I found this little girl, and she was just like cute as a button. But she was 5, and I didn't have kids then. I had just had a 3-month-old when I was casting. So I had no clue what a 5-year-old was or did, and I realized, oh, like 5-year-olds can't do shoot days and like ask questions and have philosophical conversations. Like I really didn't understand what a 5-year-old was, and I just kept casting and kept doing screen tests, and I was like, this 10-year-old thing seems kind of cool. Like these 10-year-old ladies seem to like not really be totally, they're not like on social media yet, they're not like self-aware and like super self-conscious, and like these two were just cool kids and like ask good questions. But we filmed them at the right time, because when the film came out, we started going to film festivals and stuff, and they changed a lot. They changed very quickly, and in many ways got more quiet. And so I found that sort of coming of age stage for them was a really cool parallel with the region also being rebirthed in this way of like this coming of age of what's next for the region just felt as uncertain for them. But they're good. They're both running track and still doing dance, and Lainey's taller than me, and Gabby still has all of her dreams. And
I was going to say she's well on her way to
she did like a Columbus
lawyer.
ballet thing last summer, and
awesome.
She's super talented, and she wants to be an actor, so if anybody wants to cast her in something. But I mean, hats off to their parents, because I mean, half the battle was like finding children who had parents that would support us dragging them around the state. We filmed all over. I mean, we filmed with them for a year all over, and you know, it was, and we did pay them. They were paid for every day that they were with us. So, yeah, it was like an investment of the family too.
Yeah.
And one thing to say is like something I feel like is missing in a lot of the conversations is Gabby didn't know her family's history when she applied for this role. Lainey applied for the role with a long letter about her family's history. She had like her grandpa's mining bucket and like you know, all this stuff. Gabby was interested in the role just because, like I said, she wants to be a performer. And so I thought when I cast Gabby, I was like, oh, she doesn't have coal history, not a big deal. Like Lainey has it, we'll have a conversation. I meet Gabby's grandma when we're filming at the Carnegie Science Museum, and I'm like asking her where she grew up, and she says Cabin Creek, and it's a coal camp. And I was like, do you have coal history? Was your dad a miner? She was like, yeah, my dad and grandpa were miners. And I was like, the heck, Gabby, you're from a coal family. She's like, I am? And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to go there.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so interesting that like all my family talks about is their family history in all this different way. But for Gabby's grandma, it was such a painful story because her dad had been injured in the mines, and the union didn't support him. He was a black man. They didn't support him the same way they did other miners, and he ended up leaving mining, even though he loved it, to become a barber. And so their story is that their grandpa was a barber, right? And so they kind of left that mining thing behind. It was the thing of the past. And when she told me that, I was like, well, is your house still there? Have you been there? She's like, I haven't been in a long time. I was like, oh my gosh, don't go. Yeah. We're going to find a time to go together. And it was really amazing because Jonathan, the little brother, he had never been there. And like, I released the extended interview with them. You can watch it on YouTube. Black by God Media. Do you guys know Black by God?
Love Black by God.
Yeah. So Crystal Good, she published it. It's like a 20-minute interview with Grandma telling all the stories of growing up in the coal camp there. Awesome. But yeah, that was like, that's the part of documentary I love. Yeah. And that's why I keep making documentaries, even though sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? It's so hard to find the story. It's those surprising moments when you just kind of like follow your intuition. You're doing something and you're going in a direction, and then life does this like beautiful left-hand turn you never imagined you expected to turn right, and like there's something wonderful on the other side that I could have never scripted, and like that's the stuff I'm always chasing as a documentary filmmaker. It's never I never want just the expected thing. Like anything I can imagine is always limited to based on the like reality, the experience of the reality, which for Gabby was really cool. And I did post interviews with them before we wrapped, just to be like, what was this experience like for you? Like, did you enjoy it? You know, like, and you know, Lainey is very low key. Like you can tell, she just is like who she is, right? And she's pretty quiet. And there wasn't like a ton of like learning for her. She knew a lot, but Gabby had so much learning. She was just like, I just feel like this whole film experience has just changed the definition of who I am. Like now, when I go out in the world and where I am, like I have a different reason to be connected to this place, and she's super cool. I mean, they're both super cool. Yeah. We're live streaming it. You both are super cool.
That absolutely. And it actually, that piece of it just made me think about the region, that even if your family may not currently or have deep ties to the coal industry directly, most everybody in the region still has a coal story. Like they're still there. Like my dad was a railroader. Yeah. Why was the railroad there? The railroad has taken the coal from the mountains over to Norfolk, where it gets put on a barge. You know. So yeah.
And Crystal Good, who runs Black by God, when she's in the final scene, and she was at our Sundance premiere, and she was really excited about the film because there's not enough stories about the contributions of black miners to the coal fields. And her hope was to use just like a portion of that to let people know, hey, you might have history here. Like, you have a vested interest in the future of this place too, because that's not a community that is like connected back to their roots enough. You know, the migration was from south to Appalachia, then you got out to Detroit or Chicago, right? Like, it was a pathway out, and Crystal is excited about reminding people that yes, they may have had roots elsewhere, but like they contributed to this American history. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So, what are you working on now?
I'm working on a film. So our energy consumption in the U.S. is going to double over the next decade. That's the projection, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we're filming people that are behind the energy infrastructure build out, all these types of things. So filming with grid operators, filming in nuclear plants, filming with wind, solar, oil, gas, and just trying to show this point before we enter this new phase of who knows what, with new AI and data and technologies demanding more power than ever. Right. So it's a film about labor. I've learned that it's a film about people who are seeing a resurgence in appreciation for their work that has kind of gone unseen because this is requiring skilled labor that has sort of been put on the back burner, and now like you're seeing technical schools, which we're filming with, like seeing a big resurgence. So yeah, I don't really know what the film is yet because I've only done 4 shoots. I leave for one tomorrow. So I'm sure if I screen this film here in 3 years, that's not how I will describe it. But that's how I'm describing it today. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of...
That's how it begins, the documentary. You just kind of film, and then you figure out what in the world you're doing.
There is a lot of tech happening around that right now.
Yeah.
There's, what is that, Valley Bridge? There's like a technical school that is pretty recently opened up there in southern West Virginia.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started with us documenting a apprenticeship program through a group called Solar Holler and Wayne County High School. So they were training Wayne County High School graduates to install solar. They got out of school one day to work, and they were paid by Solar Holler. So that's how we started the project, and then it kind of expanded to this nationwide thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Can I check my notes?
Yes.
Because I feel like I missed something. Oh, yeah, I did. Can you talk a minute? I mean, why did I miss that one? Because my friend who costume designed for you, that was one of the things that didn't happen. Didn't make it to the film. Talk a little bit about some of what
didn't make it.
Ended up, and not on the. It doesn't sound like in your work it's on the cutting room floor. It's just maybe put aside that can come back later, which is
I hope so.
Still beautiful, which is beautiful. So.
Yeah, I hoard footage. I don't get rid of anything. That was a scene where I was. I had read about these jazz bands that would travel through the coal fields because it's hard to imagine, but like back in the day, there was some type of Chanel perfume. I don't know perfume. It was only sold in 2 places in the U.S., New York City and Welch, West Virginia. Like, can't even fathom that, right? But like the coal operators' wives were always in Welch, and they were always in New York, and they wanted somewhere to buy this perfume, and so that's why. So like this sort of element of like prestige that would travel through the coal fields, and like there's a bunch of Tudor-style homes in like Eastern Kentucky, because like some coal wife saw this style home and she was like, this is how I want all these homes to be built. Like Coalwood, West Virginia is all Tudor style. There's a funny thing about the mine sites in Eastern Kentucky and Harlan County and other places. They're called like Martiki, Mantiki, all these things. And I was like, why are they called Martiki? A coal miner's or a coal executive and his wife went to Hawaii one year and decided they liked the tiki thing, so they came back and renamed all the mines Martiki, whatever, right? So like there's all these strange things. So one of those strange things was that like specifically like black jazz bands had a really strong pull to the coal fields and would do these like incredible shows that they were only doing in Chicago and New York, but they would come to Welsh, West Virginia. And so I was like, I want to resurrect a jazz band, like a ghost jazz band, and put it in the forest and fill the forest with fog and film them coming out of the forest playing 16 tons. It was a very cool scene. I did not realize legally Merle Haggard's family would not be super generous and license me 16 tons for a reasonable cost, and they did not. Oh. So I could not use it because it was far too expensive.
Yeah.
But scenes like that where we're just like kind of off the wall ideas I had, I hired a Coalfields Justice pastor to write a eulogy for King Coal. I mean the girls, so many of the things with the girls that we did that were just kind of crazy and off the wall. But also a lot of like really practical stuff that didn't make it. Like a lot of the coal footage, it was very good on its own, but once you start stacking things, you're looking for redundancies in the documentary. You don't want things to have the same message over and over. You're trying to like say something. Each scene can really only say one thing, and you've got to like cut it what feels like to the bone to be like, it can do this one thing, and then it needs to move the plot forward, even though there's not really a plot in this film. So yeah, so many darlings killed.
Yeah.
I have to give credit to my partner, who is an incredible cinematographer and just knows how to work with natural light in a way. I mean, his goal was, he jokes that we had like 30 plus years of location scouting for this film, because like we've documented all the places that we really love. You know, when she's laying back in the moss-covered forest, that's Cranberry Backcountry, which is really close to where we live now.
Yeah.
But Cass, West Virginia, when she's running down the boardwalk in front of those white railroad houses, all these places that just are really iconic to us that, you know, you grow up around or you grow up going to and you want to take pictures of. And even my own papa, like he's always been someone I've wanted to photograph over and over. His face has always looked like a map to me. You know, you take his face and look at his wrinkles, it looks like county lines and routes, right? And so I give him a lot of credit for going out very early to get the best light and staying up late for the last light and all those types of things.
Yeah. That also explains why the mountains always look beautiful in your shots also. When you live there, you know they're not always. Like there's sometimes in winter that you come out and go,
it's bleak.
This is really bleak.
Yeah, you see the scars.
Yeah, but you really...
We showed them covered in snow.
Yes, yeah.
We don't need any more bleakness. We know it already.
Yes.
You don't need to be told.
Yeah, for sure. So, are we still good for time? Are we ready for questions?
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah. Do you think it's 8? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Now it is time for the question and answer session. Because this event is being recorded, please raise your hand and wait for a microphone to reach you before asking a question. We reserve the first question for students, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the audience. And now we're looking for our first question.
Hi. Okay. I'm not really used to talking on a mic. Hi again. I know I was at one of the earlier events, but I wanted to ask, what's one piece of, what would you want well, at least for me, when I watched the documentary, I thought I was an outsider approaching it. I had actually forgotten that my dad had extended family that were in the coal industry, and I actually texted him about the documentary just now, because he's also a huge documentary nerd. But what's one piece of information you wish an outsider would take from this? Because I feel like I approached it like, oh, this is a documentary about something I don't really know about, and I was very neutral with my approach till midway through, and I was connecting the dots with my family.
Yeah. Information. I guess that, man, I'm really oscillating. I was gonna tell you what my head was saying. My head was saying that like not every historical period that has been good for some has been good for all. That would be one piece of information I would say. Another thing I was wanting to say was, no, I've already forgot it. I don't know. I more just want you to, what do I want? That's so interesting. I don't really think that way. I just hope that people learn. I don't know. I think the film doesn't have a singular message. And so I just hope that there's one scene that at least is enlightening in some way, whether it's just something someone says or an experience you weren't aware of, or maybe you didn't know how the Coal River was named and that's like important to you, or maybe you didn't know what happens when a coal mine explodes and you hear that guy telling a story while he's getting a tattoo, and that I think one of the things I get frustrated with is like there is an immediate dismissal of the contributions of my region to this country because of the way they vote or whatever, and I get really frustrated because like we would not have all these luxuries that we now have so readily if it weren't for the exploitation of natural resources like coal to build cities and fuel our industrial revolution. So I guess my thing would say thank you to someone that is different than you. You don't understand where they come from and what their choices were, and to maybe be, not turn a blind eye, but be a little bit more calm on judging people when you don't understand their situation. Because people sacrificed their health, the land that they lived on, and their own lives so that, New York City could be built. And it's a really great city. Like, we should be thankful for that. Was it necessary? I don't know, but it happened, right? So we should be thankful for that.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm from Huntington, West Virginia, where you filmed Heroine. So I'm very grateful and appreciative for your work and the light that you shine on West Virginia. West Virginia is selling ourselves once again by letting data centers be built throughout our state. And I want to know, maybe you don't have an answer, but as a scholar, what can we do to stop ourselves from being exploited again, and how do we protect ourselves? And in theme of King Cole, how do we get rid of the king and make more room for everyone else's dreams in West Virginia?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So data centers are complicated because instead of power plants, we are the fuel. The fuel is our data being mined. We are the miners. People are the fuel behind data centers, whereas fossil fuels were the fuel behind the Industrial Revolution with power plants. So we're entering a whole other stage of energy revolution that I don't understand. I can't advocate for data centers, given that my entire films and everything I've done is trying to advocate for rural lands and people and drawing attention to extraction of natural resources. So I'm really at a loss because I do feel like there's so much money involved with AI, new technologies and data centers, and most people I talk to aren't really wanting it, but it's something that's here and we are going to be a part, it's going to be a part of our lives. I think what's really good and bad is that, I was just in St. Louis and they tried to build a data center there, from my understanding. I was at a wedding, so this was not fact-checked, but at the reception I was told there was a proposed data center there and the people fought it and they won. And I was like, that's awesome. And then the next part of my brain was like, well, they'll just go to the next rural county and build it where people aren't organized, aren't incorporated, and can't fight it. And that's happening all across the country. So you're seeing rural lands that have no noise ordinances or pollution ordinances because they're rural and they don't have ordinances in that way, they're not organized, not being able to fight it. And so I don't know. There's the data center that's being proposed in Tucker County, which is near where I live. It's unfathomable to me that you would put a data center in a place where Blackwater Falls is and Canaan Valley is. It's just bizarre when we have literally thousands of acres of strip mines and abandoned mine land that we can't grow a single thing on ever again, right? The problem is water. They need water for cooling, and getting water to the top of a strip mine is a pretty hard feat. There is power infrastructure up there, like transmission lines, so that helps. I don't know the answer, but I fear that data will just become our new king, and that Appalachia will essentially be the bellwether, like, for those types of conversations. Not just Appalachia, but rural America. And it seems to me that, like, cities make more sense for data centers. I don't know why, given the property that's needed and the amount of power that's needed. But however, they're being put on rural lands, and we're going to see a lot of fights over the next couple years, I think. What was the second part of your question? It sounded like it was something hopeful, and I didn't provide any hope in that answer.
I guess just what we can do to protect and keep supporting Appalachia.
Visit West Virginia. Support our economy. Get involved with organizations that are supporting economic justice. West Virginia Coalition of Rivers and West Virginia Rivers and all kinds of
River Watch.
Yeah, Coal River Mountain Watch, Friends of the Cheat. All these organizations, volunteer with those. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, be responsible about your AI usage. I just feel like, you know, if you don't have to generate a cat video on Sora, like, don't. Think about what you're doing, because power is also keeping someone's grandma alive on life support as well as you're generating your cat video. So, like, I just, like, having unchecked energy consumption is just not a good way to live. So, although I still feel like we need more than personal responsibility. So, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot.
So much. There's
a lot.
It is a lot. There's a lot.
Thank you to both of you for a beautiful film. I think the most beautiful part of it for me was the way you were able to convey this sense of close-knit community. The kind of community that a lot of us, you know, dream of in a way. I also grew up in a mining town in the middle of Australia. It was a gold mining town where the statues in town were of gold miners, and every field trip I ever took was to a gold mine for school. So it's baked in at a young age. That community doesn't exist anymore because huge conglomerate Rio Tinto bought up the entire town, and it's now subsumed by an open-cut mine. Could you speak to how these conglomerates that are buying up what were once small mines that had managers that you knew, how has that changed the community?
I mean, it certainly changes the work culture and the trust and how you feel you're being taken care of as a worker. If management is overseas and no one on the ground has any ability to file a report, is given also that there's not a lot of stronghold of the union anymore either. So you are looking at companies that you have to report to your higher up, and your higher up locally has no control over this global corporation. Plus, like, there's less, I mean, you know, U.S. Steel, when they were in Gary, West Virginia, it was like they were the only game in town, and they, like, for better or worse, funded everything, the baseball field, everything, right? And that type of, like, which I'm not saying is a good thing, but that type of investment locally, you just don't see it with, like, a multinational corporation. There's actually a couple, like, really kind of sad examples of that, where you see, like, you can tell they're doing something from afar, like, well, we're going to build these like soccer fields for kids, and then like they'll hire a construction firm, and the construction firm just like takes the money and doesn't build the fields, you know, because like there's no one there on the ground to oversee anything. I remember we wanted to film the girls dancing in front of these particular coal piles, but we were told we couldn't. That coal was owned by a company in Switzerland, and we could not film it. And if we stepped on the property, we would be donezo. So this like sort of detachment from a very, very, very local source of something, source of community, source of pride, source of work, all these types of things. And it's not, I'm not glorifying, because there's a lot of problems with local management as well, but this detachment from community and place, when it's such a geographically place-driven role that you're playing, like mining coal in a specific mine, is really problematic, because they don't have the history and the knowledge, and it doesn't really matter. Like, a community it's a transactional thing. But that's not to say there aren't local mines that don't treat people poorly, you know, and treat the land poorly.
Jim Justice.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't pay your.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Hi, thank you so much for spending time with us. My name is Anna Newman. I'm a professor here in American Studies. I have 2 questions, so pick whichever one you prefer. First off, I'm a filmmaker too. I think you briefly met my husband. Yeah. And I so appreciate you talking about kind of the refusal to engage in poverty porn, which I think is really important. We're working on a film on people and their dance. Let me just, briefly say that. And we've experienced difficulty in talking to producers, to production companies, when they're trying really hard to look for a certain narrative, drama, spectacle, right? Where's the competition? Where's the failure? Where's the heartbreak? Would love if you had similar experiences or challenges to talk, if you could talk about that a little bit. Second question would be, you mentioned the Tudor homes and the Chanel perfumes and the tiki, whatever, tiki. I would love to see that too. I would be so curious as to learn more about the decision, why that didn't make it into the film.
That's a good question. So the Chanel would be impossible. There was like no archive of it, so maybe I could have worked that in the narration. That would have been really good, actually. I don't know. There's too much, you know. There's so much that left the cutting room that like never even considered really. It's a good point. The Tudor homes, that would have been a really good. Maybe I'll like release an addendum to this. I'm just kidding. What did you say the film was about?
It's about a group of people and their dance. It's not a dance documentary, right?
Oh.
It is a dance documentary, but we're trying really hard to not make it that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, goodness, everybody in this room has an opinion about your film, right? And ultimately, it's your film. So not everybody's opinion is one that needs to be listened to, because you're the only person at the end of the day that's got to make this film and got to live with it and go to bed knowing that you made the film that you either promised to the people that engaged with you to make the film or whatever. So I felt like nobody was giving me permission to make King Cole. I had to give myself permission. I could not explain it. It was such a difficult film to explain to people, because all I had was sort of reference points like Bombay Beach, which is a documentary that's like far more of a documentary, but it uses choreographed, almost like music video segments, which is not what this is. But I was like, that's sort of something. And then there's sort of this other, there's like, I was referencing like fairy tale films, and like, it was just a lot to people. So I stopped oversharing all these crazy references because it was confusing people, and I started describing the film as an essay film. People were like, oh, I know what that is, right? I know what an essay film is, I got that. And then I just kind of made the film that I wanted to make. And so to the word to like producers is give them as close as you can of references, and just stick with your guns about what your film is. Like, don't be, like, there's already enough drama and entertainment, and like, we don't need that. Like make a case for, I think it's just as important if you're making a film to say what your film is not and be so sticking to that than it is to say, because we often don't know what our films are. I remember showing up at the premiere at Sundance, and someone came up to me afterwards and was like, oh, this is this is about this, and this is this. And I was like, well, thank you. That's a very good point. It is about that, and I should say that in my next Q&A, right? Like, people, when they see our films, actually tell us more about what we were trying to do than sometimes we even know. And so what I would recommend is, like, what is your film not? Make that list, and that's the list you communicate to producers, because that will weed out the ones that are just trying to make something that's not what you're making, whatever it is. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm honest, I think, like, the whole industry is, like, set up to not reward innovative, risky things. So if you're making something that's innovative and risky, it's maybe just best to try to do it without getting a person that's not willing to go on that ride with you. Yeah.
Hi. I related to your idea of, like, the king entity, but I am not from Appalachia. I'm actually from, like, rural Louisiana, and so for me, I saw the king as being sugarcane.
Yeah.
We have all of these sugarcane things.
Good.
It's this giant thing. We can't really talk against it. How do you feel about, like, seeing the king as a different entity, or did you always imagine it as coal?
It makes me so happy that you say that, and I hear that from people about, like, king corn or king timber in the Pacific Northwest, right? Like, I've heard any community that's dominated by a mono-economy, insert king, right? It's all the same. The workings have to be the same to get that many people on board to do something that half the time is not that good for them, but is good for someone else, right? Like, there has to be a king for that to be present. So I love that people can watch us and be like, oh, this is gold mining. Oh, this is sugarcane, whatever it is, right? And that's also to say, like, it's not all bad. I feel like that's the ultimate message, is, like, we can't just write it off as, like, this was devastating for everything and every second. It certainly had its devastation, but it also brought community. So yeah, it's more complicated than, I feel like the king thing is a bit antagonistic, which was intentional for me, was an intentional choice, but I hope that the film itself is more balanced in its civil dialogue between polarities. Yeah. So I think it's cool that you find that.
Yeah, and any industry does that, right?
Yeah.
Like my husband, his dad was worked in a paper mill as a welder. Paper mills are really smelly, horrible things.
They're stinky.
And Kevin would said, his kids, be in the car and be like, oh, it smells bad. And Dad would be like, it smells like steak and potatoes.
Yeah,
yeah. Smells like you can have a college education.
Yeah. I remember saying something similar to my dad one time. We were riding down the road. No, I said it to my mom. We were riding down the road. I was very young, and I saw out in the distance. Sometimes with strip mining, you will actually see a explosion. Yeah. We didn't see the explosion itself, but I saw all the dust coming up. And I was young, and I was just like, oh, that's awful. I think that's all I said. She was like, you want to go to college? Yeah. Right? I have an MFA, and I'm sitting here. So, like, this is part of the reason why the film can't just be black and white.
Yeah.
That concludes the end of our program. Please join me in thanking our speakers.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That was fun. Thanks. I only had to consult my notes once.